Welcome, everyone. My name is Kathleen Lane. I'm the Executive Director of the EdCan Network and your host for today's conversation with three CEOs who are enhancing well-being in their school districts. The EdCan Network is a national bilingual charity connecting education professionals, researchers, and partners to share research and practical expertise for enhancing learning and well-being in our schools and school systems. We publish evidence-informed tools and resources and host a wide variety of virtual events to connect educators from across the country. The EdCan Network's work takes place across the traditional territories of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have stewarded and cared for these lands for generations. As we get started today, please take a moment to reflect on where you are joining from and the opportunities and lessons that the land offers you. Education is universally recognized as a human right. Whoops, but that's not what we're talking about today. Joining me today to share their experiences in enhancing well-being in their school systems are Reagan Weeks, the Superintendent CEO of Prairie Rose Public Schools in Alberta, Kevin Garinger, the Director of Education and CEO of Horizon School Division in Saskatchewan, Lisa Demers, the Director of Education and CEO of St. Clair Catholic School Board in Ontario. Welcome, everyone. To get us started, let's just start with a little bit of context. Can you tell us about your school district? Perhaps, Reagan, we'll start with you.
Sure. So my school district is called Prairie Rose School Division, and it is in southeast Alberta. It's geographically massive, but it has a relatively modest amount of students. So we extend all the way to Oyen, New Brigden, Acadia Valley. We come up through Irvine, Dunmore, and then we go to Seven Persons, Bow Island, Burdett, Foremost, and then we also go to Ralston, which is the CFB Suffield base, and Redcliffe. And so our division, and then we actually also serve two Islamic schools in Calgary. And so, we have a lot of different community contexts. We have 10 different joint use agreements with various municipalities, but we do have that small number of students. So we have an interesting combination of lots of different groups that we work with, but also able to keep that small town feel. So a good portion of our students are from rural communities, with the primary industry being agriculture. And I'm excited to be here today to talk to you all a little further.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's continue heading east. Kevin, where are you joining us from?
Good morning. I'm joining from Horizon School Division in Saskatchewan. Our central office or division office is located in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, so it gives a bit of context. And then our geography is about, I think we're just right around 32,000 square kilometers. So we're in east central Saskatchewan, literally ranging from just north of Saskatoon to about a half an hour outside of Regina, and everything east, or a big chunk of territory east. We have about 6,700 students in our system, and obviously in our area, just like Reagan, it's a very agricultural area, so we very much committed to supporting our obviously student learning, but we also make sure that we have a major focus on Indigenous ways of knowing around agriculture and agriculture in general. So that's another big piece, and very much looking forward to this opportunity today.
Lovely, thank you so much. And Lisa.
Thank you so much. My name is Lisa Demers. I am from Ontario. My board office is in Wallaceburg, Ontario, which is equidistant between Windsor and London. And the geography of our school board from end to end is about a 3.5 hour drive. So we're not as big as Reagan and Kevin, but we certainly do have a bit of geography that we encompass. We have 9,800 students, and that includes elementary and secondary. We have 22 elementary schools, 2 secondary schools, and of our 22 elementary schools, we have 3 French immersion schools. We have about 1,000 to 1,200 staff, and we're surrounded by 4 First Nations communities. So we're very blessed to have those partners who work with us very well. And it's a wonderful place to be. And in terms of Regan and Kevin's comments about agriculture, we are in a big agriculture belt as well. So that's very much a part of who we are as a community. So really looking forward to this opportunity to chat today.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for that brief introduction to where your school districts are located. Now, I know all three of you have been leading work to support the mental health and well-being of your students, but also of your staff in your school divisions. Reagan, I know creating positive childhood experiences has been a big part of your work. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing in that respect, but also where the idea came from and how it's evolving in your division?
Sure. And the dangerous thing about asking me a question like that is that I could talk about it forever. So I'll try and keep it relatively brief. But essentially, what happened for us is that obviously in our work, we talk a lot about adverse childhood experiences. So I know most people would be familiar with this study. A lot of people learn about it in sort of that first ed psych class that you take, and it's really the largest social sciences study ever conducted. And in that study, they basically identified in the original study 7 adverse childhood experiences that contribute to an increased statistical likelihood of unfortunate outcomes in adulthood. And it can be everything from premature death to an increased likelihood of addiction struggles, underemployment or unemployment. And the list goes on and on of what those adverse childhood experiences can add up to. But we want our schools to be a hopeful place, and we were finding that some of those conversations were beginning to really shift a focus to one of reactiveness and also spending so much of our time trying to dissect the challenges. And we wanted to flip that script. And I was really fortunate. I attended Johns Hopkins University, and one of my doctoral advisors was the author of the first study ever published for positive childhood experiences. And it happened to be in some of its final iterations while I was at the school. And so I was exposed to it at that time, and I was so fortunate. And really, it's a very simple concept. It basically just flips it. If you're exposed to these positive childhood experiences, do you have the inverse, these positive outcomes in adulthood? And to no one's surprise, that is in fact true, but it does lend credence to designing schools around joy and the positive outcomes that you can facilitate. So of the 7, there's really 4 that schools can have a massive impact on, and so that includes having friends and feeling supported and connected to friendships. There's no question in schools we can facilitate that. One is having 2 non-parent adults who care about you. Certainly, schools are an excellent place to contribute to that. One is belonging in high school. So if a person feels like they belong in high school, this is so fascinating to me, they're statistically likely to live longer. Isn't that something? So,
Yeah.
that shows us we can create high schools that really positively impact someone's life or not, So we have that ability. And then the last one is participating in traditions. And so, schools are optimally positioned to do all of those things. And we started experimenting with this work in our specialty programming. We have, I mentioned earlier, agriculture programming, but we also have some elite sports teams. We're members of the CSSHL, so we have some elite hockey teams. And then we also have a fairly substantial aviation program. And we began that programming by implementing those 4 PCEs into the curriculum and into the design of how students experience school. And we immediately saw a lot of positive results, and we started the work of replicating that across every classroom with every teacher. And so we still have a lot of work to do, but some of the immediate, just observable outcomes, not necessarily quantitatively measured, but things you can just see in schools is one, we're certainly noticing a lot more joy of the adults. Even though this was a program designed to increase positive childhood experiences for our students, it's joyful work. And so we're talking about things that are happy and what an impact that has on the adults in the building. And then we have also noted that in our assurance survey results, which is in Alberta, surveys that are issued to parents, students, and teachers, a massive increase in a variety of outcomes that we would connect to PCEs. So.
So before I move on to some of the other school divisions, how have you supported your teachers, your principals to expand this from just the specialized programs to all your classrooms?
Well, I mean, through a couple of ways. One is just by providing what we call PD packs, and they're resources that we have put together that we share with our school leaders, and then they roll that out to their staff, and they tweak it to make sure that it fits with their own school culture and their priorities in their own school, and they work through that with their own teams to figure out how implementation will work best at their own site. So that's one way we've supported it. But we've also tried to make sure that work is a joyful experience and that when our staff feel as though we have their backs and that they're supported, they're better positioned to offer that support to their students. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of other little ways that so many of the team work to make that happen, but I would say those are the two primary areas of focus.
Amazing. All right, Lisa, we'll head over to your school division. I know social emotional learning has been a big focus at the St. Clair Catholic School Board. Can you tell us more about that and how you're bringing it to life?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Kathleen. So we were so fortunate. In Ontario, we have what are called mental health leads. And so the Ministry of Education through School Mental Health Ontario funds those positions. And through our work with the mental health leads, although the main focus, of course, is our students, we were really looking for something that also spoke to Reagan's point where how do we ensure that our staff feel joy at work? How does everyone feel anchored in hope? What are some evidence-based, data-rich strategies and opportunities for us to support our students and our staff as well? So we did a lot of work with Dr. Kim Schonert-Reichel, who works out of Castle, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And we wanted to emphasize how cultivating positive human qualities like kindness, resilience, and altruism are so important. So the focus that we centered on from the Castle framework at that time was the 5 foundational pillars. One being self-awareness, which is recognizing your emotions, your values, and your strengths, getting to know who you are. Self-management, which was successfully regulating emotions, behaviors, and stress. Social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And all of this came out as well at the time where we came out of the pandemic. And to Regan's point, we were noticing that students were struggling greatly with what people called behaviors, skill deficits. And we wanted to know why and what it was that we could do. So we recognize the importance of working with Dr. Schonert-Reichel because we had to advocate that schools shouldn't just focus on academics, but also support the character and well-being of the heart, right? So focusing on the mind and the heart and looking at research-based, evidence-based manners in which to do so. So what we really appreciated about Dr. Kim's research and her evidence base was that this kind of work is not just a one-way street limited only to students, but it is reaching students through the teachers and through teachers reaching students, right? If you have a well teacher, you have a well child. If you have a well child, you have a well teacher. So that was something that really spoke to us. And through our work with the mental health lead, we've been able to do some really exciting things that you probably want me to talk about later, but wanted to give that framework. And that in 2023, we started off all this work by conducting a situational assessment in our schools to get a baseline. Where do we think we are in our pilot? And our pilot went from February till June, where we gathered information to see what next steps we needed to take.
And I absolutely do want you to tell us a little bit about the rollout, what it looked like, how you supported your staff to do this, because maybe they didn't learn about social emotional learning when they were going to school.
Okay, I will continue. I'll take that as my cue to continue. So we ran a pilot with a teacher. We hired a teacher. We found some funding dollars and had him working across multiple elementary and secondary schools from February to June of 2023. This was also supported by a community of practice that we established, where we had our special education, curriculum consultants, our CYWs, social workers working together so that they understood what is social emotional learning and why do we need to engage in it. We also made sure we provided that information to teachers, EAs, ECEs, CYWs, anybody that was coming in contact with students. And so of our pre and post survey results, there were very strong positive ratings after the end of the 6 months. 96.7% rating the training and resources excellent or good. Facilitator support and collaboration was 87%. And then we started to look at, well, what's the impact on your classroom and your students based on the data that we had received? And in terms of improving classroom culture, it was 73%. The shift to strength-based language, we really tried to minimize deficit-based language and focus on strength-based, right? And that there was a shift to 76% on that. And I think one of the really important ones to highlight too is negative behaviors decreased by 40%. And that was just in the 6 months. So we thought, wow, we've got some interesting abilities here. And the other thing was that the students said the same things as the staff. They saw the improvements. So then, once we had the data and realized, okay, how this is making a difference, we continued with our SEL teacher funding, prioritized it, and we set up a principal learning team so that principals were supporting principals and how to make this come alive in your school, recognizing that it's not just something additional to put on the plate of work, but it should be the plate. It should be how we function, where we're teaching skills all day long through, joy, to Regan's point, hope, joy, engagement, relationship building. And then we have migrated again this year. So our principal support learning team, their role was really to empower the principals with resources and support as a network to say, here's how you make this happen. We're now at a stage where we have principal network teams. So all the principals have different teams together. They go into each other's schools. They work on school norms together with the students. They look at how can we establish the best possible school climate and setting so that we're seeing achievement results. And they do that 3 times a year. And the headway that we've seen from that in terms of fewer suspensions, fewer behaviors, a happier work environment, less staff absenteeism, we're starting to see some of those quantitative pieces. And we're really building momentum and hoping that the funding allows us to continue down that path for next year. So I've talked a lot there. I'm going to stop now. Let other people have a
Absolutely. It
turn.
sounds like you got the data to demonstrate how it's been working. So that's the fingers crossed for that funding to continue. Kevin, we'll head over to you. And I know you've been emphasizing the human side of education as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both Regan and Lisa have done such a very good job of sort of giving some background and providing some insights into what we look at in terms of leadership. And certainly we recognize that in Horizon, like the other 2 districts, safe and caring, mentally healthy school cultures don't happen by accident. It really takes making sure that we're culturally responsive, we're equity centered in terms of our leadership, and that ultimately we work closely with our staff to support what's going on for our children, and in doing that, we're supporting them, but we're also supporting the kids, and so it's really critical that we look then to how we embed these pieces and support these pieces as we move forward. And a couple of things that I would mention when it comes to some of the learning for our professionals, I wanted to start with some of the work we're doing around our some of our system level leadership that really is about cultivating that sort of culture. And one of the things that we've really deeply engaged our administrators around is Leading to Learn, which is a provincial initiative that every school division has been involved in, and certainly we're no different. And what we've done with it is we've actually taken our school administrators, taught them the pillars that come from the program, the 5 pillars, and then they are also in turn embedding that in their school. So they work with their teachers around this idea of anti-oppressive, anti-racist environments, about building relationship with students in an effective way. Going back to some of the research in ACEs, when through my doctoral work, I also did a ton of work. I never had the great honor of working directly with some of the researchers like Reagan did, but certainly was very much engaged in that research and looking deeply at how the impacts that it can have on youth ultimately, but also on the adults as well. Recognizing, as Lisa said, that when we have healthy children, healthy adults, healthy children, that's really critical. So just empowering our system leaders in that way has been a crucial part of our work. And making sure that they're trained effectively. And then some of the other things we've done directly with our staff is we got engaged with a project known as Project 11. Some of you may have heard about it, but it's out of Manitoba actually, and Mark Chipman, the owner of the Winnipeg Jets, and his True North Foundation, Youth Foundation, really were the ones that researched it, worked with the universities, really came up with a program that supports resilience in children and youth, supports just looking deeply at how we can build wellness in that respect as well, and different activities. And it's curriculum, and it's aligned deeply to our Saskatchewan curriculum as well as many other curriculums across the country. And so it's been something that we've really engaged deeply in and found that it's had a significant impact, and having a significant impact on the learning of our children. We trained, I think we have 150 teachers currently trained in or close to 160, I guess now, but trained in Project 11 so that they're able to then have this curriculum piece then that really helps to seamlessly connect the outcomes that we know from Saskatchewan's health education curriculum and obviously tying in this piece. So it's been a real positive element. And then as well, there's so many other things. I think back to what Reagan talked about around some of the things that just happen, and we're very fortunate. We have very strong relationships with our teachers associations and that sort of thing, which have led to really simple and easy processes around negotiation and that sort of thing, because we focus on the issues from really a needs assessment perspective. And then like I said, it's led to some really positive results from both sides in so many ways in terms of managing their well-being. And then through that process, we also have we've brought in and it seems like a simple thing, but the COM app, we have over 500 of our staff using the COM app regularly, which we've found to be very positive. There's some pieces around being culturally responsive that we're still working through, but ultimately it's really been something that staff have really been very positive around. And then we have significant other opportunities whereby we have mental health leadership projects going on throughout our system, involving our students, involving our counselors and our teaching staff, which again have also had significant impact on the well-being of our staff. And one thing I just wanted to mention is we're seeing huge results, and again, not so much quantitative but qualitative, from a curriculum that we have engaged in, that we developed or was developed within our organization, known as Mind Body Health. And it's meant for high school students, and it's really about building, again, this add-on piece that builds resiliency and strength in terms of mental and physical well-being, which is, we know, the direct connection between the two. And so that's been another piece that we've been doing. So, and then lots of other pieces, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that fascinates me is all three of you have talked about how much you've invested in supporting your staff to do this well. And it's such a common narrative in education that everything must be directly to the student. And yet if we don't support our staff, how do we support our students? Can you talk a little bit about how you made that decision to invest so heavily in supporting the staff? Because clearly it's having a positive impact.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking that you're directing that at me, Kathleen, or
Well, and then we'll
or
go back to
anybody.
Lisa as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'll just maybe add in one little piece. I think of great organizations or organizations that are on that path from good to great, and I think that um, the voice of the people is really critical. I think as in our roles as system leaders, I think the focus on ensuring that we are supporting the people who are supporting the client, the children, is really a critical part of our work. It has to. I mean, I none of us can go out and teach and support children directly. So our work has to be that indirect work with our staff then that and our leadership teams that ultimately can build the culture of that we want to see within in the organizations. But so that training piece is really critical for us. And it really has to get down right to the classroom in order to support the children effectively. So that's a major part of where that stems from. I remember doing a book study with the board on it was had nothing to do with education, but it was Al Stubblefield's Journey to Excellence, creating a system that a system that wows, I think is the title. But anyway, he talked a great deal about a healthcare system, a Baptist healthcare system that was floundering. And in just a few short years, it flourished because they stopped focusing on the client and focused on the people who are supporting the client. And they became one of the most successful healthcare systems in Western USA. So I think that's the nature. It doesn't stem from that. I think it probably comes from what we believe and understand, but at the same time, that kind of looking at research, it certainly is very critical to make sure that we're empowering our people to support our children. And when we have those healthy relationships and healthy structures, pardon me, and supports in place, it leads to great things. So I'll stop and let others jump in.
I echo exactly what you just said, Kevin. That was that was a very eloquent way to say it. I think, we know because that is our job, right? Is to support the students. It's student-centered, student-focused. But to Kevin's point, who are the people in front of those students? And if those people aren't well, aren't coming to work, don't feel empowered in their job, then there's a culture and a climate that's created that's not supporting each other. And I'm guilty of it myself too. We become so student focused that sometimes we do need those constant reminders that you have to have the support for your staff, because they are the ones in the classroom with those children. They are the ones who need to be able to go to the colleague next door in a school if they need a break or if they need some help or need some support. And if you don't have a framework where people feel comfortable to do so, or where people enjoy coming to work, or knowing that there's not psychological safety there where they can really be themselves and really ask for what they need, then we've missed the boat. So to Kevin's point, we've started finding that more and more, especially after COVID, and with our social emotional leader, teacher leader going out and asking people questions and going and doing work elbow to elbow with the teachers, who some of them said, I don't think this will make a difference. And he said, well, I'll work with you. Let's do it together and we'll see. And those are some of our teachers who've had the greatest shift. And now they go and share how to make this work and how they just feel better coming to work. They're having fun. They feel joyful. They feel hopeful. So I think that was a real lesson learned. And when you know better, you do better. Well, now we know better. So we're trying to constantly do better and make sure that our staff are supported in whatever ways we can.
And, just going back to the evidence, like it's clear that you're living proof, both of you, all of you are living proof that it's working. The other one I wanted to touch on is, and Lisa, you talked about it a little bit, behaviors had gone down, I think 40% you said in that 6-month pilot. And we know across the country, managing classroom complexity is a challenge. There's increasing diversity in our classrooms for whatever reason, probably many, many different reasons. Challenging behavior seems to be showing up more often. Did you have any other insights that you wanted to share around how social emotional learning is supporting positive outcomes and easier classroom management, or other work that you're doing that connects to this?
Yes, thanks for that question, Kathleen. Yes, and it is all connected. It's school climate, right? So it's when we broke it down, we looked at everybody's school climate surveys. When we looked at what our assessments were saying, the pieces were that things were very disjointed. So, for example, in a school, people were spending more time perhaps saying, well, I don't know what the rule is, or did we talk about the rule as a staff? Or, well, why does this get to happen here and that doesn't get to happen here? So we talked about establishing norms. So schools get to establish their norms. They do it together. They do it with student voice. They let the parents know. Parent council has a piece in it. So it's not just a top-down approach. It's how can we make this the best place we can? And we know when you set expectations and you set the bar high for kids and for staff, they can attain it. And I think it was COVID isolated us from that sense of community. And so we're trying to rebuild it and bring that back to say, you're stronger together. We all need each other to be able to do any of this work. So it's not just that's a child in your class. It's the conversation to say, these are all of our kids. These are all of our responsibility. How can we work together to create a supportive climate together? So that's been a significant focus for all of us. And that's why we have had the principal networks working together and supporting each other's schools as well, to give each other ideas and to cross-pollinate the good work that is happening. Because that was the other thing we learned, lesson learned. There's a lot of good happening. Instead of thinking of all the negative things we need, that might need to be fixed upon, what are the good things that are working well? Let's replicate those, right? So we do see that that's happening in a lot of schools. And, we all still have our tier 3 students who have lots of complex needs, but it's teaching the skills more intentionally longer so that the kids aren't moving up the tiers of intervention. We're actually making sure that all kids have a fighting chance to learn those skills. It's just become the expectation. Kevin?
You're focused, Lisa, on hope, being harbors of hope in so many ways, is such a critical focus. And so I really appreciate what you're saying. And one of the things that through lots of my coursework and that sort of thing, both in my master's and doctoral work, but I found that that system to system learning, school to school learning, system to system learning, Fullen talks a great deal about it and the importance of that work, as do others, obviously. But I mean, he's in your province, so I wanted to sort of touch on Michael and the great work that he has done in that respect in terms of sort of providing us with some of the research base around it. But ultimately, it is so true. I mean, you can have a great school within your organization, but how do you get that pollination such that other schools become great? And I think that idea that you're hitting on is really a pivotal piece. Like, start with the principals; they're the leaders in the schools, and make sure they're having those opportunities to work together, work closely. And I think then, just like today, I'm learning so much from what you're sharing, what Reagan shared. Systems are learning together. It's why I believe so much in CASA and the work that we do, and EdCan, and the work we do across the country. Let's learn from each other, because there's so much that we can learn that can then sort of pollinate our own organizations and provide greater opportunities, more hope, more joy for our students and staff within our own organization. So I believe strongly in how you shared that, and you shared it very, very well. I think it's such a critical part of our work as leaders, is to build that culture where learning isn't isolated behind the doors of a closed door of a classroom anymore. We need to expand that and look outside of the walls of the school to other schools, to other organizations. And I think it's such a critical piece that then leads to that hope and joy that comes from the hard work that education is. And there's no question. I mean, what teachers do every day, what administrators like yourself do every day is hard work, but it can also be such a rewarding place when we see our kids finding joy, when we see our adults finding joy in our buildings, and so but it has to be intentional, like you've talked about, and it's about leadership, and it's about sort of building those types of cultures through the work that you do together, and that collaborative work is vital, obviously. So thank you for sharing that.
You have all shared such wonderful, inspiring thoughts on how do we create mental health, well-being in our schools, focusing on the relationships, building the skills of the adults, making sure that they feel supported and cared for, and then seeing the ripples of joy through the school buildings and the whole school communities. So thank you both. Thank you all. Reagan unfortunately had to drop off, for sharing your insights on what is working, because we do need to share those stories and share hope across the country. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Kathleen, again, it's a great PD opportunity for me when I get to meet with people like Reagan and Lisa and hear from them about what they're doing and the great work that's going on in their organizations. And as you said, it's pollinating the work here in Horizon School Division in so many ways. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kathleen. It's been a great learning opportunity.